And in the series finale, it is the day before the big board vote, and Kendall Roy is a little nervous. Right now, he doesn't have the votes, and the latest news that he gets is that Stewie might be waffling. Now, it doesn't mean that Kendall's still not confident he can salvage this thing, but it's not looking great. And not too far down the street, you've got his sister Shiv basically celebrating with Mattson over the fact that they do have the votes. And it's just a formality before they own Waystar. Shiv, though, is doing a whole lot of talking. A lot of it is stuff that Mattson just doesn't really care about. Quite simply, there's just a lot of nervous energy in the room with Shiv, and it's starting to sink in that she will finally be CEO of her dad's company. Mattson does ask her what she thinks about Tom regarding ATN, and she's brutally honest. She says that he's good for the role, and she's okay with it if he wants to keep him on. Her phone then buzzes, though, and she has to walk away to take the phone call, and it's her mother. It's because Roman has shown up at her house. And neither Shiv nor Kendall knew exactly what happened to Roman, but their mother tells Shiv he's in a bit of a fragile state. You might want to come pick him up. And it's not like going down to the store or going down the block to go get him. They have to go to some tropical, nice-looking island, which is going to require a private jet. But Shiv's willing to do it because she feels like if she can sway Roman, then that'll just leave Kendall on an island by himself. So she brags to Mattson right before she leaves that she's going to unify this board right before the vote. And then she takes off to go meet up with her brother. Right before the plane ride does take off, she gets a phone call from a very nervous Tom. He's scheduled to meet with Mattson, and he's constantly been worried that his head is on the chopping block, so he wants to get Shiv's feeling on it. And she promises Tom that she's going to do everything in her power to keep him on, but ultimately it's going to be up to Mattson. She's just doing what she can at the moment. She does, though, want to have a serious talk about their relationship. They are, after all, having a baby together. And after joking around a little bit, she finally just says, "Are you ready to be in a serious relationship?" And Tom says, "Honest to God, I don't know." Not exactly the news Shiv wanted to hear, and she hangs up and tells the plane to take off. A couple hours later, she touches down and heads over to her mother's house, where there's Roman. A little bit beat up, and he's telling a lie that he ended up winning the fight, which he clearly didn't. But all in all, he looks fine. He just looks like he wanted to get away. Shiv, though, isn't the only one that's coming. While Kendall was trying to get in touch with Stewie, Hugo walked in because he had gotten a beat on where Roman was. Now, one of the reasons why Shiv and mainly Kendall want to touch base with Roman is because they don't know if he's coming to the board vote, and they're going to need to know which way he's voting on. Especially Kendall. Kendall's counting on Roman's vote to be on his side, so he really needs Roman to come back. So he grabs another private jet and heads down, and while heading over, he finally gets in touch with Stewie, and Stewie reassures him, "I'm on your side." When he finally does get to his mother's place, there's Shiv, already with Roman, and she tells Kendall, "Back off, he's fragile." Even though Roman is saying, "I'm not fragile." Kendall doesn't even get pleasantries out of the way. He gets right into it. "The hell are you doing, Rome?" Kendall then looks at Shiv and asks her if she has anything to do with this, but he's coming off extremely desperate. And Roman just tells him, "Maybe I had a change of heart, and I just don't care what you have to think." As Kendall continues to berate Roman, Roman just gets tired of it, calls him a clown, and walks off. Their mother comes over to try to defuse the situation and invites all of them to stay for dinner, which, reluctantly, Kendall does. Shiv was already planning on eating. They do have some time to kill, though, and Kendall and Shiv have it out a bit. There's a big pissing contest between the two about who has which votes. But as Shiv points out, I'm still winning 7-6, so you can get whoever you want, but I'm still going to end up coming out on top. Kendall, though, does throw out that he is hearing Mattson is talking to Lawrence Yee from Volter. Shiv plays it off like she knew this, but in reality, she had no idea. This pissing contest does get interrupted when Roman finally decides to join the group. With both of her brothers there, she offers up some of the IP, saying that when she's in charge, she does want to keep them somewhat on board. But they take that as a slight. Roman equates it to their sister getting them a job at the mall. Shiv, though, was trying to give her brothers a lifeline, but she doesn't appreciate the fact that they're making her out to be the bad guy. The way she looks at it, they decided to take the crown and leave her out of it. So she decided to go behind their back and get the crown. But as all three kids have awkward conversation, back in New York, Tom is having his meeting with Matsson, and it doesn't go nearly like Tom had planned. The reason why Matsson wanted to meet with Tom wasn't to see if he wanted to let him go. It was to see whether or not Tom would be good to be CEO. Matsson admits to Tom that he's just been kind of souring on Shiv. He didn't really appreciate the way that she handled getting the numbers out for those fudgy subscribers. But one of the main things is Matsson wants to have sex with Shiv, and that could make things complicated. So instead of getting the woman who has a baby, he might as well get the guy who put the baby in her. He thinks that Tom would be best for the role because he's good, he's talented, and Mencken likes Tom a lot. So if things work out for Mencken being in Oval Office, it'll be good for ATN. Tom assures Matsson that he would be perfect for the job. But man, this is a lot for him to take in. He showed up at this meeting thinking that there was a chance he gets fired, and in the end, he's going to end up being the president and CEO of Waystar Royco. Matsson wants to celebrate, so he gets up to go get shots, and Greg scurries over and asks Tom, "So what's the deal, man? Are you getting fired?" And Tom doesn't tell him any of the news. He simply tells Greg that they're going to be all right. Tom, however, doesn't want to stick around for shots. He lets Greg do those. So Greg heads on over where Matsson and his team are celebrating, grabbing some shots, but they're all speaking in Swedish. And Greg is sick of listening to these people speak in Swedish and he not know what they're saying. So he opens up a translator. And he's able to figure out through their translation that Shiv is not going to be the CEO, that they're stabbing her in the back, and then it's going to be somebody else. At this news, Greg decides to try to use it to his favor. He calls up Kendall and interrupts him in the middle of dinner, and he tells him the news that Shiv is not going to be the CEO if this deal goes through. Kendall then calls around and gets word that, yeah, Matsson is interviewing a couple other CEOs. It's definitely not going to be Shiv. Kendall then runs into the room and grabs both Roman and Shiv and breaks the news. And her initial reaction is that it's bullshit. She doesn't believe it. But when she calls Matsson up, he doesn't answer, which she plays off like is normal, but in this situation, it's a little fishy. Kendall, realizing how this looks, tells her, "Go call Carolina. They've erased you from the new deal announcement draft." Shiv runs off to make that phone call, and Roman asks Kendall, "Is this a play?" And Kendall says, "No, this is real. Greg told me. It's rock solid." A few minutes later, they hear a scream, and it's Shiv confirming what her brother just told her. All three of them get emailed the latest draft, and sure enough, the name of the CEO is X'd out. Now, Shiv has to get her mind around the fact that she will not be CEO, but also the fact that she was being played. So even though about 10 minutes ago she was full team Matsson, she walks back and she wants to kill this guy. They need to figure out how they can salvage this thing for the family, so they call up Kendall's right-hand man, Tellus. Tellus, not realizing that Shiv is on the line, tells the group that it makes a lot of sense of what Matsson's doing, interviewing other CEOs. The fact is, Matsson doesn't need Shiv. The good news is, with Shiv now on board, they do have the votes. They could block this thing. But Tellus points out they're going to need a plan. I mean, they're going to need to go in there as a unified front and pitch the board on why they should vote no. It's not as simple as having the votes. You actually have to have a direction for the company. And so far, that direction hasn't worked with Kendall and Roman in charge. They need one figurehead. Everybody knows who Kendall's going to look at. And yeah, he does think that he should be in charge. But Roman sheepishly points out that their dad said that he would take it over, even though no one heard that conversation other than Roman. And he's just frustrated at this point. Shiv is also frustrated because she feels like it should be her. And the fact is, Logan Roy told all of them at one point or another that it would be them. The frustration gets to Roman so much that he walks away. And Kendall tells Shiv he doesn't want it. He just can't admit it. And Shiv, I'm sorry, but we can't go in there with a mission statement and a unified front and have you be the face of it because yesterday you were stumping for Matsson. Yeah, look, it has to be me. I'm sorry. It does. It benefits me. I want it, but also I'm the only option. This is a tough pill to swallow. All three of them head down to the beach where Shiv and Roman speak privately. And they come to the conclusion that Kendall's right. It does have to be him. So they swim out to the barge and they let Kendall know the good news. He will be the king of the castle. When the trio head back the next day to New York City, they're game planning on how to get this deal back. It looks like they have the votes, but they have to just make some phone calls. They also, before the board vote, have to head on over to their dad's place because Connor has arranged this quasi-claiming of all of their dad's property. Willow wants it out of there. They get there, Connor lays out the ground rules on how the hierarchy will work, and then they start going through the house. But when they enter one room, there's a videotape going on of a dinner, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago, with Logan. And they all stop what they're doing and watch this, because it's just their dad in his natural element. He's having fun with those that he was closest with, like Jerry, like Carl, like Frank. But it's really the only time where you're going to see all four kids together smiling. At the end of it, they continue to make their rounds around the house, and Tom has arrived. He also is going to be on this claiming thing. And this is the first time that Shiv is seeing or talking to Tom since his meeting with Matsson. So she asks if he's fired, and he totally undersells it. He says, "No, I think I'll be okay." He then wishes her good luck, knowing full well that she won't be CEO. But to his surprise, she says, "Oh, yeah, no, it won't be me. Yeah, I found out that he stabbed me in the back. Yeah, Greg actually told us." Shiv, thinking in that moment that she could actually trust Tom, kind of ruins everything. Tom asks her if she knows who exactly will be the American CEO, and she gives a bunch of names, but none of them are Tom. And at first, he plays it off like all those names would be equipped, but guilt kind of gets to him, and he finally tells her, "Shiv, it's going to be me. Yeah, you'd find out sooner or later." And man, it pisses her off. She can't believe that Tom would once again stab her in the back. She storms back into the room where Kendall and Roman are, and she says, "It's Tom. Let's go. We got to get back to the office and run our numbers." And they head out. Tom, meanwhile, before he calls up Matsson, decides to go have a little private conversation with Greg in the bathroom. He asks Greg point blank, "Did you tell?" Greg just kind of shakes his head, but Tom yells at him. He tells Greg that he was this close, and now they have a chance of rallying the troops and taking it from him. Now, in Greg's defense, he actually didn't know that he was screwing over Tom. But that doesn't stop the two from getting into a bit of a slap fight. It's adorable. But at the end of it, Tom leaves and he calls up Matsson and gives him the news. And Matsson starts going into panic mode. A short while later, all three kids enter the Waystar Royco offices and they're ready to save this deal for their family. They all get into an office together and Hugo asks for the latest. And Shiv tells him that the Gojo deal is going to die. Kendall then walks over to his father's desk and promises Hugo he's going to get him all the details that he needs. But then right before he sits down, he pauses. He looks at both Roman and Shiv and kind of gets their blessing to sit down in the big chair. And they give it. Stewie then enters the room, and they all kind of question Stewie on if they have his vote. They've all been told that Stewie will vote for him, but, Stewie's kind of a wild card in this whole thing. In order to guarantee that Stewie will vote for Kendall, Kendall suggests that they offer Stewie a chair. Kendall kind of pitches Stewie in his typical cringy Kendall way. And Stewie says, "Yeah, no, we'll think about it. But Shiv, I think if we give Sandy a little bit of a tug, she might be foldable." And Shiv says, "Great, let's go." And the two leave together. As Roman watches those two walk away, he sees Jerry get off the elevator with her lawyers. And it spooks him. He doesn't want to see Jerry. And suddenly Roman doesn't want to see anybody. He actually suggests calling in his vote, which Kendall says, "That's going to be tough to do. People have seen you." He can tell, though, that Roman is having a bit of a meltdown. And what's really bothering Roman is the fact that he feels like people are going to look at him and say, should have been him. Why wasn't he the CEO? Why wasn't he in charge? But Kendall tries to tell him, "Look, man, all of this is just presentation stuff. I mean, it could have easily been you." They then walk out because it's time to meet as the board. And we have no idea what Stewie said to Shiv or what Shiv said to Sandy, or if they even spoke at all. But when Shiv walks back into that boardroom, she has a different look about her. They all, however, sit down. Frank kicks off the board vote, and it goes exactly as everybody planned it so far. The votes are deadlocked 6-6 until it gets to Shiv. Shiv's vote is going to sway this thing one way or the other, but she doesn't vote. Kendall can't believe it. He doesn't know what's taking her so long, and Shiv finally gets up and walks out, asking for a minute. But Kendall isn't willing to give her a minute. He races after her, and so does Roman. Kendall, Roman, Shiv, they all meet up in a separate conference room, and Kendall asks, what the hell's going on? And Shiv says, I think I changed my mind. Kendall is beside himself. He's livid, he's pissed off, but he also realizes that this thing could be saved, so he starts trying to pitch Shiv on the fact that he is the right person for the job. I mean, he goes from being angry to being desperate to sounding confident, but Shiv tells him, I just don't think you'd be good for this. I love you, but I can't stomach you. When Shiv tells Kendall this, he starts screaming at her. I mean, everybody in the office at this point can hear what he's saying. Once he finally calms down, he starts begging her, telling her that if he's not doing this, he just doesn't know what he is as a person. But she tells him, you can't be CEO. You killed somebody. And that's a fact that Roman certainly forgot, and it takes Kendall completely by surprise. He wasn't expecting her to play that card. But Kendall lies to them. He tells all of them that it was made up. And his story doesn't really make a lot of sense, which gives Roman some pause. He can't believe that his brother would either lie about it or say he's telling the truth, make it up, and use it as a play. He's kind of disgusted at this point. Kendall can tell that he's losing the room, so he screams at Shiv, I am the eldest son, which, by the way, isn't true. And Roman says, yeah, but she has the bloodline. I mean, your kids, not really your kids. They were test tube babies. And Kendall gets so mad at that comment that he starts grabbing Roman's face, choking him. Shiv tries to get him to stop for about a second, but then she just tries to leave to go cast her vote. And when she tries to do that, Kendall goes after her. Roman stops Kendall because his sister is pregnant. And it ends with Kendall and Roman wrestling on the ground as Shiv goes to make her vote. About 30-40 seconds later, cooler heads do prevail, and Kendall is still trying to game plan on how to save this thing, not realizing that it's over. Even Roman has just given up. He doesn't care anymore. About a minute later, a pretty disheveled Kendall re-enters the room, and he tries to get them to put the vote on pause, but Frank tells him, Ken, it's over. The vote passed to sell to Gojo. And a very surprised and shocked and disappointed Kendall Roy just turns around and walks out of Waystar Royco for the final time. A couple minutes later, the new CEO, Tom Wambsgans, shows up. Shaking hands, kissing babies. Everybody's walking up to him to congratulate him. People like Stewie, who didn't vote for the deal, congratulate him, say that they're looking forward to him being the lead. Hugo, who was working very closely with Ken's group, also goes up to Tom and congratulates him. But Tom doesn't really want to speak to Hugo. He just is looking for Carolina. So it's not looking good for Hugo's future at the company. Greg sheepishly walks in and congratulates Tom. He starts asking Tom what his plans are, and Tom is planning to axe Carl and Frank. He doesn't want to deal with them anymore. He does, though, want to keep Jerry on board. And Greg nods and asks who else, obviously implying that he wants to know what his future holds at the company. And Tom tells him, you screwed up, man. I mean, you really screwed up. Mattson looks at you like Judas. But I got just enough capital to save you. Because at the end of the day, nothing breaks up the disgusting brothers. The next thing to make this deal official is a photo op that's going to involve a very disgruntled Roman signing the paperwork along with Lucas Mattson. As soon as it's done, Roman gets the hell out of there. He doesn't want to be anywhere near Lucas Mattson. Mattson takes photos with his group along with Tom, Frank, and Carl, and then they celebrate. When it comes time to leave the office, Waystar's new CEO, Tom Wambsgans, gets in the car, and he's not alone. Shiv is with him. She is looking miserable, but she does congratulate Tom, and then Tom puts his hand out, and Shiv puts her hand in his. They drive off into New York City, united. And that is the end of Succession. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this video. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. I have a Patreon. I have merch. Go buy a t-shirt. I'm not Waystar. I don't have billions of dollars, but I do have mouths to feed. So that would be cool if you could do that. Be nice in the comment section. If I got something wrong or missed it, you don't have to point it out. It's cool. It happens. Or at least do so in like a nice manner that doesn't make me infuriated. I have kind of a Logan Roy type temper to nasty comments. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. I do appreciate it.